In the realm of rules, a black armored knight is kneeling. Someone calls him a player. He looks up at the owner of that hand, vaguely like a wisp of smoke, calling the player Jang Suun. She says there isn't much time left. The leader of the demons, the greedy devil, had split the mountains and hell to extract rare gold to build a temple. The temple of 10,000 demons was initially located at the top of the tower, but after the Third Great War, the gods had driven out all remnants of the demon army, including the temple of 10,000 demons from the top of the tower. After they annihilated all the demon remnants, the place seemed to be enjoying a brief peace when a mysterious enemy from the outer world suddenly attacked. The monster appeared dark and shadowy, with tentacles like snakes and suction cups resembling hundreds of thousands of eyes. Ultimately, it destroyed everything. The outsiders, possessing greater power than even the gods, chased the stars away, pursued and annihilated the players, including those who had lost their powers, and ultimately destroyed their society. That is the current situation the tower faces. Soon thought it was unbelievable that the temple of 10,000 demons had fallen to the 92nd floor, but because of this, they now had a chance to turn the tide. The tomb of Mammon concealed something he was seeking. If he could use it to turn back time, light streamed through the door crack. The system announced player Jang Suun had entered the temple of 10,000 demons. It complimented him on being the first player to reach the temple of 10,000 demons, marking a historic feat, achieving an extraordinary feat. Soon stood before the temple, relieved to have finally arrived, amazed that this was the temple of 10,000 demons. Suddenly, the ceiling trembled, making Soon realize that it had noticed him. He'd better hurry up. He used the skill compass, rated as the #1 skill for exploration. Without this skill, he could not have survived and reached the temple of 10,000 demons. Soon used it and muttered to himself, "I trust you once more, lead me to the place of Mammon's tomb." He hurriedly followed the compass to a dead end, which puzzled Suun. Perhaps it wanted him to touch the wall-hanging candle. As soon as he pulled it, a tunnel appeared. Soon followed the passageway to a large golden gate, which was undoubtedly the tomb of Mammon. Soon took out the key, muttering to himself that he never thought he would have to thank that guy Felches. Even thinking back on what he had done still annoyed him. Back in the day, Felches and his group had tossed the key to Suun like charity, taunting him to take it as a reward for the quest, since they had no money to pay him anyway. Suun was angry because the original agreement was not like this. If they continued to exploit him, he would stop working with them. But they arrogantly threatened that if he broke the contract with the guild, Suun's career as an adventurer would be over. Recalling this made him disillusioned because he had accepted the key instead of payment despite not knowing its purpose. When Suun inserted the key into the lock, a notification also appeared that the hidden point of the golden key had been unlocked, opening Mammon's tomb. When he opened the door, what struck his eyes was an endless treasure of coins and gold, which shocked Suun. He exclaimed at the terrifying treasure, and what caught his attention the most was the legendary sword Turfing, the martial arts of the heavenly demon, ancient magic books, and even a dragon's heart. The ground shook, making Suun realize something was wrong and commanded the compass to move on. He dug through a pile of gold to find what he was looking for, which was the hourglass of Kronos, capable of reversing time. He wanted to reverse time to prevent the great war between gods and demons, to save the world from falling into the current tragedy. Suun decisively used it. A bright light emitted from the hourglass, reversing time inside the tower for the first time. He swore he would do everything to prevent the tragedy. But at that moment, the monster had found him and attacked. Suun quickly grabbed the thunderbolt weapon of Zeus, a strape. Suun swung the sword, creating a blinding lightning explosion towards the monster, but its tentacles lunged and knocked him back. Suun bit his lip because it was stronger than he had thought. But at that moment, the destruction sword levitating caught his attention. He picked it up because no matter how strong the outsiders were, they would still be hurt by a weapon of the gods. He tightened his grip on the sword, taking a step that cracked the ground and charged forward. Flames blazed from the sword, and his eyes also turned to the golden hue of the gods. The clash between him and the monster exploded, Suun gritting his teeth as he analyzed that the outsider had formed by enveloping other creatures. The strike exposed its true form, resembling a wild boar. When it charged, he quickly grabbed the trident from the treasure trove. It was the spear of Light Bryonak, the weapon of the light god Lu Rabada, capable of penetrating everything. Suun lifted it powerfully and threw it towards the wild boar. The strike pierced through the monster's body, and the system announced that he was the first to kill an outsider, marking a significant achievement. Simultaneously, the hourglass of Kronos was active, the tomb of greed was collapsing, and since there was no longer an owner, the tomb recognized the key holder Suun as the new master. A dark force invaded, causing Suun to panic as he had destroyed the gluttonous mouth, the system granting him the powers of the devoured. Then a brilliant light enveloped him, healing his injuries, erasing all the skills he had acquired, and resetting the experience points he had before. Something had changed in his body, the light gradually disappearing as the notification returned him to the training trial. In a clearing surrounded by dense forests and cliffs, a group of people stood confused, looking at each other, none of them knowing why they were there. In front of them appeared a system board welcoming them to the training trial. While everyone was still confused, Suwon knew he had returned to the past. A few people loudly called out, hoping someone would explain to them, making Suwon think he should stay away from them. At that moment, a young man in a suit, trembling, grabbed his arm, asking Suwon if he knew exactly what was happening. Suwon was slightly disoriented, recognizing him as someone who had been brutally killed in a previous life, his throat savagely torn open. He tried to reassure him, but the man panicked, screaming because he was pulled into a strange place, even thinking it was a hidden camera prank. Suwon realized that no one would listen to him, so it was best to let them face everything on their own. The system then announced that the first chapter of the trial adaptation would begin, with the time until the first wave of monsters being 4 minutes and 21 seconds. Everyone else panicked, while Suwon felt that everything was just like the last time, but this time he understood the importance of system stats. The greedy and gluttonous techniques were unfamiliar to Suwon, instantly recalling the notification before reincarnation. Previously, he did not possess them, wondering if it meant he could use them thanks to the rewards from his past life. While contemplating, a radiant golden chest appeared in front of Suwon. It was the treasury of greed containing countless powerful weapons and divine instruments. He realized he could indeed build strength to combat external enemies. At that moment, the first wave of monsters began and panic ensued as a pack of wolves howled from the forest. They screamed and lunged at the group with bared fangs and claws. The people hastily turned to run in the opposite direction, but the wolves had also surrounded them from behind. Just when everyone thought they would die, Suwon declared that if they didn't want to die, they should fight. Someone stopped him, thinking he was insane for suggesting they fight barehanded. However, another person intervened, a tall, stern man, Kang Han-cheol, asked if he had a plan. Suwon shared his strategy that while he handled the monsters, the others should focus on defense. Han-cheol, though confused, agreed. Suwon opened the treasure chest and decided to use the 10 martial arts, a secret from the Shaolin sect, wanting to test this power. A wolf charged at him, but Suwon punched it powerfully, sending it flying away in pain. Then a pack of wolves rushed towards him. Suwon swiftly leaped up, turning midair to kick, shattering the ground, creating a mound of earth that knocked the entire pack away. The onlookers were stunned and in disbelief. Particularly, Han-cheol felt this person was incredibly strong, as if hiding something, a man without weapons repelling a large pack of wolves. It seemed he sensed something burning when a wolf lunged at Han-cheol, who effortlessly blocked it with an arm, decisively slamming its head to the ground. This surprised the nearby people. They began to realize something. They had a numerical advantage and needed to find weapons to fight back. However, Han-cheol was currently focused on observing Suwon. His strength seemed illogical. Those techniques were powerful and entirely different from him. Han-cheol clenched his fist, determined to fight alongside Suwon. Having defeated the wolves, Suwon, gasping for breath, realized his body was still too weak. He was now exhausted. But then he felt like someone was watching him. The system also notified him that the constellation Raven Bowing was observing him. Suwon was taken aback because the Raven Bowing constellation was the original owner of Mammon's treasury of greed. Suwon was puzzled, wondering if the crouching crow had realized he had used his item without permission and whether he should hide it. It would be strange if he were punished here, having just returned to the past only to be finished abruptly. The system notified that Mammon had detected the distorted traces of causality around him, reminding him of the existence of the hourglass, with Mammon smiling. Suwon was stunned because Mammon knew he had used the hourglass. Perhaps Mammon had anticipated everything. Suwon then doubted when Mammon did not respond, as if tacitly allowing it, which made him decide to use it at his own discretion. He then decided to test his mundane power, choosing a designated target as a wolf carcass based on the system's instructions. Upon using his skill, a surge of dark power emanated, consuming the wolf carcass completely without leaving any bones. An update appeared stating that his power had increased by 1, agility by 2, helping Suwon realize that absorbing the dead could also enhance his stats. He was pleased, knowing that if he could use this skill, he might push his physical capabilities to the limit. However, he then realized that Beelzebub, the gluttonous demon, might notice this as well, confirmed by the sudden appearance of the notification of the starving prince looking startled. As Suwon worried, this constellation continued to stuff wolf meat into its mouth. He was astounded that one of the strongest evil beings could lose its mind over meat, which could be an advantage for him. By feeding him freely, he absorbed all the wolf carcass, pleasing the starving prince with the unexpected feast. Meanwhile, his power and agility increased again, though less than before, but Suwon remained optimistic as that was not his immediate goal. Indeed, the gluttonous constellation demanded more, pleasing Suwon as this was a negotiation between them. At this time, others had also defeated the wolves. Everyone was happy, and the system announced that they had overcome the first wave, all receiving 50 points. Suwon wondered if it was because he had dealt with half of the wolves that there were fewer casualties than before. The system calculated individual points as follows. Suwon received 220 points, Han-cheol 80 points, and Siu off 40 points. He was also satisfied with his current points as throughout the trial, individual contribution points would accumulate, and the higher the points and rank, the greater the rewards and the likelihood of being chosen by the constellations. His goal was to be at the top. After the first wave, Suwon realized he needed a weapon. Even though he had access to Mammon's treasure, there were still limitations and a weapon would compensate for those. Thinking this, Suwon decided to go deeper into the forest to enhance his stats and find something useful, as increased stats would allow him to access better items in the treasure. Just as he was leaving, someone called out to him. It was a girl who looked vaguely familiar. He was surprised to realize that she was Yuseo Ah, known as the Whirlwind before her regression. She was still a newcomer approaching him. A girl came closer to Suwon and asked where he was going. Suwon didn't remember who she was but found her voice very familiar and her black hair made an impression, helping him to remember. She was Yuseo, known as the Whirlwind before his regression. Suwon couldn't remember everyone here but couldn't forget Yuseo, also known as Seo Ah, who had made a name for herself along with Henshio. She was one of the top people of the tower. Seo Ah inquired again about his purpose for leaving. Suwon internally felt it troublesome because every minute of his was valuable and he didn't have spare time to deal with others at this moment. So Suwon briefly replied that he would go and scout the area. This explanation did not satisfy Seo Ah, and she suggested that they gather and discuss first. Suwon doubted the feasibility of this, but she insisted on her point. Suwon sighed in frustration as they were short on time and it wasn't something that could be explained in detail. He continued to question Seo Ah's method while reminding her of what they could do when the second wave began. Seo Ah interrupted him and expressed her concern. Suddenly, both of their screens lit up with a notification. Trial Guide, Chapter 1, time remaining until the second wave of monsters. Both were stunned as they had less than 3 hours left. The information was mentioned again, 3 more hours, the masterpiece of Junai. Seo Ah asked confusedly, but Suwon coldly told her to leave and to pay attention to the system's messages. He turned and entered the forest, not without taunting Seo Ah, leaving her confused and unsure of his actions. Suwon suggested indirectly to Seo Ah that she should use her time to find a lifeline. She was puzzled but said nothing further. Suddenly, the forest echoed with a noise. A wolf was slammed against a tree trunk. Suwon walked on calmly. Behind him lay the carcasses, and he couldn't help but wonder about their number. For Suwon, this was a perfect moment to increase his stats, so he immediately used his gluttony skill. The system announced that he had devoured the wolf and could no longer absorb nutrients from a similar entity. The constellation had grown tired of this meat. Suwon sighed, lamenting the greed of the demon, and this was not something that could turn into a monster. He looked up at the sky, requesting patience from the constellation, which responded to his plea. Suwon picked up a stick to test his treasure trove of greed skill. Information about a sword appeared. Suwon studied it thoughtfully, guessing that the treasures had lost their form and retained only their power, and he resolved to make them his own. Suwon smirked, beginning the experiment and muttering to himself. The weapon in his hand glowed brightly. The light forced Suwon to shield his face, and what remained in his hand was just a clump of ash. He cursed in frustration because it couldn't contain the power of the sword and had disintegrated. Suwon sighed. He could adapt, but if he used a stronger move, it would turn to dust just like the stick earlier. He looked at the wolf but regretted that it was not a suitable target. Suwon wondered if others could use this power. If so, there weren't many treasures he could use. His only choice was to increase his abilities, so he needed to find a new weapon. Suwon walked through the forest, looking around but finding nothing suitable, wishing for some direction. Then he used his skill, opening the treasure trove of greed. What he unlocked was the muzzle of Knoll, which quickly merged into his body, giving him the olfactory sense of a dog. He immediately became alert to his surroundings. Suwon found what he needed and rushed towards it, the strong scent of rust confirming it. He glanced at the system notification. The constellation began to complain. Suwon made a humorous comparison while running away. He ran until he had to stop to catch his breath, and behind him, the silhouette of something appeared. Suwon quickly sensed it, and his eyes widened in disbelief as a gigantic wolf emerged from the darkness. Only when he saw it clearly did Suwon realize in horror that it was a gray wolf. Standing face to face with the gray wolf, he guessed that it had found him just as he had sensed its presence. Before his regression, Suwon had always been busy running away, but this time he had decided to fight. As the wolf charged, Suwon agilely dodged, his gaze steady, noticing that this wolf was not only bigger but also quicker than the brown wolves. It aimed directly for his throat, a critical attack meant to take down its prey in one strike. Suwon managed to avoid the lethal blow but still sustained a minor injury to his neck. Touching the wound, he couldn't help but remark on the wolf's danger, thinking that he would have been killed if his dodging skills weren't sharp. The wolf attacked again and Suwon moved to the side and kicked it hard in the midsection, but his attack seemed to do little damage. Instead, his leg began to tremble due to limited stamina. Nevertheless, he did not lose heart, but continued to assess the situation, cursing under his breath that his strike hadn't been strong enough. Suddenly, several brown wolves appeared behind the gray one, complicating the situation further. Suwon realized this pack was not an easy opponent, and that the situation had escalated beyond the possibility of escape. Quickly scanning the area, he spotted a rusty sword nearby. As the pack charged at him, he swung the sword, not expecting much, but to his surprise, it cleaved a brown wolf in half with a single strike. Soon was amazed to find that the sword was stronger than it looked. He acknowledged it as the best weapon he could wield at the moment and continued to decisively take down several more brown wolves. At this moment, the constellation Crouching Crow was observing him. Soon began to feel a connection with the constellation, gaining confidence as he gained the upper hand. After he had eliminated the brown wolves, only the gray wolf remained. No longer intimidated as before, Soon immediately employed the Hamel family sword technique, a skill he had drawn from his memories before the regression. The gray wolf launched a fierce attack, but soon countered with a series of powerful strikes. As the wolf clamped down on the sword, a fierce tug-of-war ensued. Soon used this moment to his advantage, delivering a series of slashes to the wolf's body. Blood dripped onto the ground, and the gray wolf gradually became exhausted, its breathing weak. Soon confirmed that his attacks were effective and felt proud that the Hamel family's sword technique was of the highest caliber. Finally, he lunged forward and finished the wolf with a stab through its mouth. The wolf fell, and the system announced that Soon had successfully defeated it. Following this, notifications about item rewards appeared. Soon received many valuable items but still felt a lack of individual achievement points, which he thought crucial for enhancing his strength. Soon harvested the wolf's corpse, upgraded his sword, and continued preparations for the next wave of monsters. The system announced that the second wave was about to begin. Quickly donning his cloak, checking his inventory, and setting off, Soon worried he might arrive late, but he also saw it as an opportunity to challenge himself. Upon arrival, he witnessed a chaotic scene where humans were fighting wild boars. Some people ran away in fear, while others stood their ground and fought. Soon remained calm, analyzing the situation, and began to formulate his plan of action. At that moment, a fat man loudly demanded that the others stop the wild boars, while he himself hid behind another person. He issued orders in a haughty tone, believing that the person was working for him and thus had to fight. He even kicked the person to urge them on. Soon, who was observing, felt disgusted by such self-centered individuals who only knew how to protect themselves. Soon assessed the capabilities of the remaining people and noticed that they fought better than expected. Despite the lack of weapons, they showed remarkable potential, especially Xiu Ah and Han Chiel. Soon stepped forward, ready to intervene. Meanwhile, Xiu Ah was gasping. She was struggling against the wild boars, realizing that these animals were more dangerous than the wolves they had faced before. When a boar charged, Xiu Ah managed to dodge but still suffer a minor injury. Su's words echoed in her mind, causing her to clench her teeth in anger. Another boar charged at her. Xiu Ah picked up a branch ready to fight. Before she could strike, a swift, clean slash ended the boar's life right in front of her. Soon stamped on the boar's corpse, surprising Xiu Ah, who called him crazy. Soon did not respond, merely gesturing to the approaching herd of wild boars. Using his skills, he opened the treasury of greed and retrieved his special item, an orc tendon. Unsure if his body could withstand it, when a boar charged, he dodged and delivered a strong slash, instantly killing it. The rest were quickly defeated. Everyone around, including Xiu Ah, was amazed at his strength. Soon felt satisfied, feeling his strength increase thanks to the high-level orc tendon he had collected earlier. As Soon finished off the boars, the fat man approached, praised him while scolding the others for their uselessness, and quickly expressed his desire for Suwon to become his personal bodyguard, introducing himself as the CEO of 2-1 Corporation. He continuously offered rewards and high positions at the company to tempt him, but was oblivious to a wild boar behind him. Soon smiled faintly, saying he didn't need those things but was just looking for a meat shield. The fat man immediately changed his expression, looking annoyed. Soon kicked him to the ground, disdainfully comparing him to the 4 nearby wild boars and advised him to take care of them. The 4 wild boars charged, causing him to run away in terror. Soon left, letting the boars tear him apart. The second wave of monsters quickly ended. The survivors gathered together to check the wild boar carcasses. The system announced that all participants were awarded points and everyone was relieved to have survived. Soon topped the individual rankings, using the greed item to consume the monster carcasses, gaining additional strength. Soon declared that he would keep one item forever, recalling his past experience before regression when he only ate wolf meat. He remembered it as a horrific experience. This time, with the sword in hand, he began butchering the pork for cooking. From behind, a young woman offered to help him, mentioning her experience with meat processing from her time working at a restaurant. Soon agreed, and the others joined in. However, they quickly encountered difficulty in starting a fire. Soon muttered something, then opened the treasury and pulled out a flame called Cash's charcoal fire, using his skill to resolve the issue. The survivors quickly lit a fire, grilled the pork, and ate to regain their strength. Soon also sat down to eat with them, ignoring the constellation's reaction to the meat. While eating, Sito brought him some water and urged him to drink. As Soon chewed, he turned to look at her, realizing she had sat down next to him and started a conversation. Seo asked about his sword, and he simply replied that it was luck. Seo's eyes showed envy as she held her wooden stick. Knowing Seo's past in swordsmanship, and that she could not fully utilize her potential with her current tool, Suun accessed the system, asked her a few questions, and advised that with her current points, she could purchase a sword. Puzzled about how to proceed, Seo was thoroughly guided by Suun. After following his instructions, Seo was amazed to realize the system functioned similarly to a game. Holding the newly appeared sword, she questioned why Suun knew about this, but he vaguely replied that he simply adapted to the situation. Seo thanked him and mentioned that someone had once advised her to familiarize herself with the system. Their conversation ended with Seo promising collaboration. As a new day began, the system announced that the third wave was coming in less than an hour. Seo gathered everyone, who appeared sleepy but quickly became alert and followed her arrangements. Suun observed, clearly sensing the change in the group's morale and organization. Suun acknowledged that it was Seo's influence that allowed him the time to focus on other tasks. Opening the treasury of Gree, he retrieved a strange item and began calculating how to enhance his mana power. He paused to feel the energy flowing smoothly through his body like a river, and using a technique from Mammon's treasury, he controlled his breath to tap into the energy trapped in his lungs. Suun carefully integrated it with his body, successfully creating his first mana circle using the method of the Blue Tower. The system displayed a major achievement and awarded him 1,000 points. While the constellations continued to react, Suun remained calm and focused, indifferent to their attention. He considered the two constellations he possessed, far surpassing others in the area. While practicing, an unexpected figure appeared. It was Park Jong-pil, a bully known for preying on the weak. Approaching Suun, he addressed him as Big Brother, trying to ingratiate himself by claiming they were in similar situations. Suun, however, merely looked at him with disdain. Internally, Suun realized how the changed circumstances had reduced Jong-pil to such lowliness. Directly, Suun questioned his agility and promptly declared that Jong-pil would serve as bait in the upcoming attack. The system signaled the arrival of the third wave. The survivors were ready, and from a distance, the silhouettes of fierce monkeys appeared. The two groups clashed quickly, with humans at a disadvantage due to the speed and strength of the monkeys. In the critical moment, Suun and Jong-pil emerged, with Suun forcing Jong-pil to act as bait, drawing the monkeys' focus onto him. The plan swiftly took effect, giving the survivors a chance to counterattack. Jong-pil ran desperately, followed closely by the troop of monkeys that gave him no chance to stop. Suun observed from a distance, inwardly amused by Jong-pil's unexpected speed. Despite his cowardice, he ran faster than Suun had anticipated. Meanwhile, a panicked Jong-pil turned back to beg Suun for help, but Suun calmly instructed him to run straight to him. Jong-pil complied immediately. As he reached him, Suun left a warning and then unexpectedly conjured a blazing fireball. He threw it towards Jong-pil, who was terrified but managed to dodge in time. Stunned, Jong-pil turned back to ask Suun what that was. Others were equally amazed, unable to believe that Suun had just used magic. Disregarding their astonished looks, Suun withdrew from the battlefield. He didn't want to monopolize all the opportunities to earn points and used his skill to devour the group of brown monkeys to accumulate more experience. After the battle, Jong-pil knelt before Suun, continuously bowing his head and pleading to serve him for life. Suun smirked and told him to eat bananas to maintain his strength for the upcoming waves. The response surprised Jong-pil, but he obediently followed the advice. In another area, the wild boars were busily digging in the ground. Suun approached them quietly from behind and quickly subdued each one. He had no difficulty in defeating them, and as a result he leveled up to level 3, which he suspected was related to the power of the abilities he possessed. The system displayed a notification that the number of survivors was decreasing, but the completion time did not vary as much as he had expected. There were changes in the individual rankings as well. While Suun was checking the surroundings, a gigantic wild boar suddenly appeared behind him. However, he was not surprised, having anticipated this scenario. This boar was the boss of the wild boars, known as the hill-digging boar. Without hesitation, they engaged in a brief battle. With his superior skills and strength, Suun defeated the boss in a single strike. After downing it, he collected the wild boar's tusks, a special item different from the gray wolf pelts. He stored it in his spatial bag, also noticing a box emitting a bright golden light, which the boars had likely been digging for. He decided to take the box with him, then left the crowded area to find a quiet place. Sitting in a secluded spot, Suun began sharpening his sword to maintain it, preparing for the next wave. As he was working, an old man suddenly appeared from behind and marveled at his sword-sharpening skills. Suun turned around and asked if the old man knew how to sharpen swords. The man confidently replied and quickly set to work. The result impressed Suun. His sword looked like new, sharper, and more perfect than ever. He handed over the gray wolf pelts and wild boar tusks for the man to handle. During this time, a notification from the system appeared, stating that a special constellation was paying attention to the player Go Chang Siak. This constellation, known to be one of the Demon Kings, possessed a skill that could turn most metals into gold. Goat Chang Seok, intrigued by Suwun's explanation about the constellation, questioned their existence. Suwun explained that attracting the attention of a constellation isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that a clever person could leverage this attention to gain an advantage. After some discussion, the two reached an agreement that benefited Suwun. As the old man departed, the system announced that there were 3 hours and 21 minutes left until the fourth wave began. Suwun smiled coldly, ready to face the upcoming challenges. Suwun was sitting cross-legged when the system announced that he had unlocked the triple talent skill, allowing him to observe everything in the universe. Creating just one mana circle had already made him sweat profusely, but he didn't stop there. He aimed for his dantian. Theoretically, the mana circle was forming in his heart, while the dantian was located in his lower abdomen. In a moment of effort, Suwun's dantian opened thanks to the triple talent skill. Now he could control his internal energy to enhance the effectiveness of his secret techniques, and the system rewarded him with 1,000 points. With an hour left until the next wave, he exhaled heavily, planning to rest for a moment when he noticed that Chang Seok had returned. Chang Seok had come back earlier than expected and brought the equipment Suwun had requested, including a gray wolf cloak and a fang dagger, both ranked D and D+, respectively. Suwun took them, marveling at Chang Seok's tool-free crafting skills, feeling that he truly deserved Bera's regard. Afterwards, Suwun suggested that Chang Seok stay back to utilize his abilities fully. With 57 minutes left until the fourth wave, he anticipated it would be even more challenging. At the camp, Seo was directing everyone to prepare for the upcoming difficulties. Despite prior warnings, many seemed complacent, which worried Seo since Suwun had indicated it wouldn't be simple. At that moment, Han Chiel suddenly smashed the ground, fracturing it. With just 2 words, "Be quiet," he immediately made everyone alert. With only a minute to go, everything was in order, thanks in part to Han Chiel, for which Seo openly expressed her gratitude. The monster wave had arrived. They were wolves they had fought before, but now several times larger, stunning everyone. Zhang Pil was shocked by their size, but Suwun remained calm, making sarcastic remarks. Observing the frightened yet steadfast people holding their weapons firmly, he felt as if he was looking at his past self, who had also once been in their shoes. However, among them, Siua and Han Chiel stood out for maintaining their composure. He then turned to Zhang Pil, ordering him to start hunting despite his fear. Zhang Pil, though scared, obeyed, crying as he moved forward, expressing disappointment with his older brother's cold demeanor. It wasn't long before he attracted a large pack of wolves in pursuit. Zhang Pil ran frantically, while Suwun had accumulated enough energy for a large fireball. Suwun, without signaling, threw a fireball straight at Zhang Pil, startling him into tears. The fireball quickly eliminated the wolves. The system announced that the Star of the Hungry Prince quickly picked up his items, watching the meat roast thoroughly. A robust wolf surviving the initial onslaught charged at Suwun, who simultaneously drew his sword and opened his treasure trove of greed. The skill of the Blood Wolf sword technique, specifically designed for fighting wolves, activated, and an illusion of a fierce wolf head emerged from the blade. He used the first technique, the Blood Wolf's Claw, to agilely bring down the wolf with a single strike. This terrifying enhancement was also due to his having opened his dantian, allowing him to use internal energy to enhance his physical abilities. As another wave of wolves approached, Suwun continued to use the enhanced first technique, effortlessly killing the entire pack without moving. The swift massacre left Zhang Pil sitting, trembling and bewildered, questioning if Suwun was still himself. Suwun sighed and told him to stop fooling around. Then he quickly devoured a gray wolf, absorbing its nutrients to rapidly increase his strength and agility. The system again announced the Star of the Hungry Prince opened his mouth wide, continuing to devour. At this moment, Zhang Pil expressed his desire to help others. Suwun then had time to notice that everyone seemed to struggle with the monsters, including Han Chiel, who couldn't keep up with the wolves' speed, whereas Seo was doing quite well. Suddenly, Suwun's attention was drawn to her strong swordsmanship, just as the Star of the Spider King also lowered its gaze to observe her swordplay. The Spider King, a giant spider wearing a crown named Baal and leader of the 72 Demon Kings, although not a demon god, was a master swordsman and commander of 66 demon legions. Given Seo's evident swordsmanship, it was natural for Baal to take notice. The system announced that the Star of the Spider King wanted to assess Seo's potential. In an instant, Baal's figure overlaid hers, launching a deadly strike at the enemy. Seo swung her sword with extreme precision and swiftness, quickly eliminating all nearby monsters. Although she wielded only one sword, it seemed as though she had 1,000, which was also the power bestowed by Baal, seemingly to test if Seo was worthy of this power. As Seo nearly finished off the wolf pack, the opportunity for others to participate also arrived, with everyone wanting to end it quickly. Witnessing it all, the Star of the Spider King also raised its front leg in satisfaction. The fourth wave of monsters had come to an end. Everyone received 100 points, and the individual contributions leaderboard was revealed, with Suwon, Seoa, and Han Cheol taking first, second, and third places respectively. At this moment, Seoa was too exhausted and collapsed, but Suwon quickly caught her, complimenting her on her excellent performance. Although the situation had resolved, many were injured with bite wounds carrying highly dangerous toxins. Handul urgently asked if there were any doctors or nurses available. There were some present, but without specific equipment. Everyone felt helpless. Suddenly, everyone's attention turned to Suwon, who was holding Seo with a frightening expression. They understood that something significant was about to happen, as Suwon had been merely observing until now. He suddenly stood up and walked towards the injured, startling everyone else. He asked them to move aside, then opened his treasure trove of greed and immediately used a healing light to stop bleeding and alleviate pain, assisting the injured. Handul quickly asked him to help on the other side, and upon hearing that his ability had a usage limit, enthusiastically responded that she would prioritize the critically injured. This outcome far exceeded Suwon's expectations. No one died, and the injured could recover quickly. While he was resting against a tree, Han Cheol unexpectedly appeared before him and proposed a match. Suwon chuckled secretly, seeing that Han Cheol was still as before but maintained a firm attitude, knowing that to have a proper conversation with him, he needed to wear him down first. Suwon quickly agreed but bluntly refused Han Cheol's suggestion to use weapons and magic, infuriating him. He assumed a defensive stance, insisting that they should first wrestle without weapons, to which Han Cheol agreed. As soon as he finished speaking, Han Cheol charged at him and threw a powerful cross punch. The attack was strong but exposed many flaws, which Suwon did not hesitate to exploit by delivering a kick. Although the kick landed, it did not affect Han Cheol much, instead causing smoke to rise from Suwon's foot, confirming Han Cheol's incredibly solid physique. Han Cheol continued his assault, but Suwon agilely dodged. He realized that he could not defeat Han Cheol bare-handed. Suwon then accessed his treasure trove of gluttony and used the skill of Tai Chi, one of the two great martial arts of China. Suwon took a stance, fluidly received and redirected Han Cheol's punch, leaving him extremely surprised. Not giving Han Cheol a chance to recover, Suwon immediately launched a forceful push that sent him crashing into a tree. Despite the impact, Han Cheol was unharmed and continued to advance. It was evident that in terms of sheer strength, Suwon couldn't match Han Cheol. However, Suwon possessed the skill of Tai Chi, whose essence lies not in brute force but in using the will to control the surrounding energy. Any attack that solely relies on strength is futile against Tai Chi and only results in the attacker hurting themselves, as was the case in their duel. Every move Han Cheol made was not only dodged, but was also turned against him, striking him directly on his right shoulder. He was forcefully thrown against the tree again, this time with greater force, splitting the tree behind him in two. Han Cheol collapsed, sitting down and clutching his shoulder in extreme pain. Eventually, he conceded defeat. Surprisingly, Suwon did not speak a word. Instead, he approached to treat Han Cheol's injuries. He gently consoled and acknowledged Han Cheol's strength. Then, standing up, Suwon extended his hand and invited Han Cheol to train with him, suggesting they spar twice daily. Suwon extended his hand towards Han Cheol, expressing a desire to spar with him twice daily at that location. Initially taken aback, Han Cheol furrowed his brows but eventually grasped Suwon's hand, agreeing to his proposal. Han Cheol's reaction seemed to catch the attention of the constellation of the old man riding a crocodile, identified by Suwon as Ageres, the second Demon King, indicating that Han Cheol had finally caught the interest of a constellation. As the fifth wave of monsters began, everyone's morale surged with a renewed determination to prove their survival skills. Suwon stood with his arms crossed, observing a noticeable change in everyone's demeanor. Facing a group of aggressive wild boars, Seo calmly reminded everyone to hold their weapons tightly. Jong Pil, standing beside Suwon, eagerly awaited his command. However, Suwon simply responded indifferently, stating he would only watch without intervening. Historically, Suwon had restrained himself, handling most enemies to match everyone's skill level, but now, witnessing their strong fighting spirit, he no longer felt the need to do so. This included Seo, as everyone needed to earn their points. Meanwhile, Seo faced off alone against a gigantic boar, but skillfully dodged and delivered a critical strike. Suwon then turned his attention to Han Cheol, who was also battling another boar, radiating a powerful aura. Using only one hand, he firmly grabbed the boar's tusks and powerfully swung it over his head. Suwon was surprised by Han Cheol's technique, recognizing it as Tai Chi, likely enhanced by his pact with Ageres. Suwon, stroking his chin, concluded he might no longer need to intervene. Jong Pil, sensing Suwon's intention to leave, smiled ingratiatingly, asking to accompany him, but was bluntly rejected by Suwon, as he intended to head towards the steep mountain behind them. Startled, Jong Pil hastily bid farewell. As Suwon entered the forest, he was blocked by a group of monkeys. One sacrificially attacked, only to be cleaved by Suwon as easily as chopping wood. The system then announced that thanks to his inner strength, his blood fang had been enhanced. After dispatching the group intended as a feast for the hungry Prince Constellation, he faced complaints of insufficiency. With a stern face, Suwon promised to satiate it fully. Thinking of tending to it as one would care for a child or pet, he felt weary. Suwon noted that atop the mountain lay something it had yet to taste, reflecting that before his regression, he had never dared explore this area. Now things are different. Suwon possesses the Greed Vault and the chimpanzee-headed rock wall of Baladin. With such power, climbing mountains has become as easy as eating candy. Acting on his thought, Suwon began to climb the mountain bare-handed. Thanks to the monkey instincts flowing through his body, he could discern where to place his hands and how to handle the wind. Looking down from above, he realized that without this power, he would have fallen long ago. The constellation of the hungry prince wondered where he could find food in such a place. After some struggle, Suwon finally spotted a vine. But as he turned around, he saw 3 monkeys in a panic, presumably terrified by the sight of a human climbing to their location. Suddenly, one of the monkeys threw a stone at Suwon, who kicked off powerfully and leaped upwards, simultaneously pulling out a dagger to stab into the rock face to maintain balance. Realizing that one strike was not enough to deter them, Suwon looked up and discovered a cave entrance that the monkeys were likely using. Considering whether to hide there, he began to create a fireball. The monkeys, seeing this, were terrified and began to sweat profusely. Shortly after, an explosive noise echoed across the mountain. The 3 monkeys were scorched and fell, and Suwon successfully reached the cave entrance, which, as he had predicted, led to the summit. Following the path, Suwon reached the mountain peak. At that moment, a white-haired monkey wielding a staff suddenly appeared, roaring to demonstrate its authority. However, Suwon smiled in amusement upon seeing the monkey leader, pointing his sword at it and saying it was just a monkey, not Sun Wukong. Yet its appearance reminded him of the constellation Great Sage equal to heaven, suggesting that the tower might have been designed to mimic this. As the strong monkey charged, Suwon felt excited to face a worthy battle. He smiled at the monkey, feeling that this was the real battle he had been seeking. Suwon and the monkey fiercely fought, the weapon skills of the monster boss in the trial being quite impressive. It powerfully attacked, pushing Suwon to the defensive, which could disadvantage him. Just as the monkey slammed its staff down, Suwon quickly retreated. He carefully sheathed his sword, then with lightning speed, he rushed forward to attack while dodging the staff, aiming to strike while minimizing damage. Seizing the right moment, Suwon grabbed the monkey's staff and pulled hard, causing it to be dragged along by inertia. However, since it was very strong, Suwon couldn't fully overpower it and ultimately had to kick the monkey away to finally seize the staff. He sighed, looking at the staff in his hand, which was heavier than he expected. The monkey, furious at having its weapon snatched, roared in anger. Suwon calmly taunted it, challenging the monkey to come and take it back. Then he opened his greed vault and used a secret technique from the beggar's sect, intended to scare off mad dogs to threaten the approaching monkey. The monkey's face twisted in a grimace of doubt upon seeing Suwon's stance. Suwon, understanding its hesitation, smiled and told it to dream on. Atop the rocky peak, the monkey was beaten as if it were a stray dog. When it fell, the system announced that Suwon had defeated the mountain's rock-climbing monkey boss, increasing his personal contribution points by 1,000 and awarding him a fiery gemstone. Seeing the gem, Suwon thought of giving it to the old man later. Meanwhile, as he was busy absorbing the mountain-climbing monkey lying on the ground, the system notified him that he had absorbed its nutrients, increasing his agility and intelligence by 5. With a 10-point increase at once, the overwhelming power of greed was no less insane, almost turning him into an unstoppable tank. After a moment of thought, Suwon also noticed what the mountain-climbing monkey had been guarding. He pushed aside a boulder, revealing a deep, dark cave entrance. The system then announced that he had discovered a hidden dungeon, the training ground of the forgotten hero. Suwon smiled wryly as he had encountered a dungeon right at the beginning of his trial. Dungeons could provide more experience than regular battlefields, and the rewards were more substantial, even multiplying several times if he was the first to clear it. Having come this far, there was no reason for him to hesitate. Acting on his thoughts, Suwon immediately opened his greed vault and used night owl eyes, gathering light even in the darkness to brighten his vision. Suwon stepped into the pitch-black dungeon, where many bats hung from the cave walls. As he entered, his presence disturbed them, causing a chaotic flurry of wings. The path from the entrance was a steady descent, suggesting that the deeper he went, the further down into the mountain it would take him. Suddenly, Suwon was surprised by the scene before him, a vast space with a high cave ceiling and a giant stone pillar in the center. Weapons were scattered everywhere, and the walls and floor were covered with slash marks, truly living up to its name as a training ground. As he surveyed the area, Suwon spotted a golden keyhole. Seeing it, he smiled confidently as everything was going according to his plan. He then drew the sword of the forgotten hero and thrust it firmly into the keyhole. The golden keyhole emitted a brilliant light, and Suwon successfully gained the right to challenge the forgotten hero. Almost immediately, the shadow of the forgotten hero rose from the ground behind Suwon. Before Suwon could prepare mentally, the figure began moving toward him. Sweating, Suwon glanced at the hilt of his sword, but it was stuck. At that moment, the system notified him that no other weapons could be used here except the broken sword, and the mana levels in the cave had also dropped, making magic unusable. Left with no choice, Suwon had to find another sword as the match officially began. The forgotten hero made a slight movement, then charged forward with a strong attack. Suwon struggled to lift his sword to block the blow. The hero smiled at him, pleased to have a challenger after a long time. After a brief exchange, they separated and Suwon furrowed his brows, realizing that not only he had come here to challenge. The hero, smiling, informed him that long ago another had come, but it seemed that person had failed. After exchanging a few words, they resumed fighting. The overwhelming power of the forgotten hero was too much for Suwon's broken sword, which shattered under the force. Suwon's sword was broken by the hero, who then took advantage of the moment to attack, forcing Suwon to raise the broken blade in defense. Observing this, the hero appreciated Suwon's reflexes, but noted his movements were slow, which he found odd given Suwon's experience, as his body couldn't keep up. This assessment surprised Suwon, as the hero had discerned so much from just a few moves, but it also made him realize that the hero was using an advanced sword technique in his instruction. The hero, not expecting Suwon to have noticed, smiled with delight. It turned out this was why no one had ever passed this test, as merely finding this place was already near impossible. Without waiting for Suwon to continue, the hero concluded that if this was all Suwon could manage, it would be better for him to fail outright. He then charged swiftly. Suwon, unarmed and wearing iron, had to dodge each powerful strike. The hero questioned how long he intended to keep dodging, since the attacks would only get more complex. Suwon was aware that continuous evasion would eventually lead to serious injury. With no other option, he resorted to his ultimate technique. Behind him, a yin-yang circle appeared, and the broken sword in his hand suddenly glowed as he used the Tai Chai sword technique. As the hero struck down, Suwon shouted and quickly parried. The hero, impressed, chuckled and continued with another swing, admiring the technique, though it still wasn't enough. However, a large movement exposed a vulnerability, and Suwon took this chance to lower his center of gravity and prepare a lethal stab. Sword energy surged past the hero. Dust and smoke rose in the cave. The hero's sword was left with just the hilt. Suwon's move was impressively anticipated, earning high praise from the hero, who acknowledged that such skill could only come from extensive experience, while also suspecting that Suwon was hiding his true strength. Suwon had just gained this power after opening the greedy treasure vault, and anyone unaware of this would naturally be suspicious. Suwon inquired how he could pass the test, and the hero calmly replied that having disarmed him, he had already succeeded. Suddenly, a stone pillar behind Suwon lit up with a blinding light, and the hero asserted that with Suwon's potential, it was unlikely anyone would be able to take the sword from him. The sword, firmly embedded in the lock, was the dungeon's reward and had long been protected by its power. Suwon tried to pull the sword out, but its weight remained unchanged, as the sword was in the process of accepting a new master. Confident that a sword that could choose its owner was at least of A grade, Suwon held the hilt tighter. Already a resilient man, in his previous life he had managed to reach the 92nd floor of the tower without any special talents. Thus, even if it meant shedding blood, Suwon continued his persistent effort. Indeed, heaven does not forsake the diligent, and the sword finally came loose. Suwon was amazed by its new appearance and couldn't stop marveling. While he was admiring the true form of the sword, the hero suddenly smiled contentedly, saying he would overcome difficulties with just the current sword. Before vanishing, the hero expressed hope that Suwon would achieve even greater things in the future. Suwon had perfectly conquered the dungeon, his level had increased, and he had achieved a historic feat, gaining an additional 20,000 individual contribution points and acquiring the Durandal, a sword that cleaves stone. The constellation of the Crow was visibly jubilant. Meanwhile, Seo Ah and her group had begun fighting the sixth wave. She was commanding everyone to maintain their formation as they had the upper hand. Han Chiol was fighting a white-haired monkey, knocking it down only for another to charge at him. Suddenly, exchanging glances, Seo Ah worried about what might have happened to Suwon for him to be gone so long. Seeing him silent, she suggested they go look for Suwon after the wave, but Han Chiol declined. Seo Ah asked if he wasn't worried, to which Han Chiol thought that Suwon wasn't so weak as to need their concern. Just then, Seo Ah, astounded, looked up. She no longer needed to worry because Suwon had done something they couldn't imagine. Both of them saw his score of 28,660 on the system board, and Han Chiol quietly said they needed to hold off these monster waves and be stronger by the time Suwon returned. Seo Ah smiled in agreement. After receiving his reward, Suwon suddenly came to. He lay sprawled on the desolate ground. The forgotten hero had disappeared just after he had drawn the sword, and all of Suwon's mana and internal energy were completely depleted. He slowly sat up, then looked at the sword. Right now, Suwon was eager to check its stats, but first he had to fully recharge his dantian. After saying this, Suwon began to meditate with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he turned towards one side. He noticed the pillar in the middle of the cave emitting a bright blue light. It seemed that the reward included more than just the sword. Suun opened his treasure vault of greed, utilizing the dark mana ring and the extreme heart technique, both of which are excellent tools for cultivation. With a confident smile, he thought that if that was the case, he might as well absorb all the energy available. The dungeon was overflowing with energy, all converging towards Suun. As time increasingly stretched on, the system continuously announced the passing of monster waves. Suun had been away from the camp for about a day and a half, and he was pleased to see that all participants had been awarded 200 points. However, in this first trial challenge, the final wave was the 10th, and the monsters in this wave were significantly stronger. It seemed that Suun also needed to return to the camp soon. He slowly stood up, feeling the energy within his body that he had accumulated through the extreme heart technique. He had managed to amass half a golden core of internal energy in his dantian, and all his powers and techniques were enhanced and upgraded. Even Suun himself could hardly believe that in less than 2 days he had advanced so much. It was truly extraordinary. More importantly, the Durandal, the stone-cleaving sword, although much of its power was still sealed as it had not fully recognized its new owner, was a legendary sword that had been wielded by mythical heroes. Holding it, Suun could scarcely believe that such a thing was used as a stepping stone in the first trial. Before his regression, he had heard of its existence but did not know its location. He swung the sword experimentally. The immediate effect was so impressive that Suun marveled even sealed it was powerful. The seal had probably not been lifted because his own power was not yet sufficient. At that moment, the system announced that there were only 24 minutes left until the 9th wave. Suun had to sheathe the sword and hurriedly run back to the camp. He tried to run as fast as he could out of the cave. Outside, red-haired monkeys were attacking everyone. The number of monsters was overwhelming. This caused the front lines to falter, making it difficult to hold steady. Even the time to care for the injured was not available as the monsters relentlessly advanced. Over by Siua's side, she was still fiercely battling, taking on 2 monsters at once. However, she was distracted by a spider crown with jewels, leaving her no time to focus on anything else. Since the 7th wave, the monsters had significantly strengthened, and with so many injured, it was uncertain if they could hold on. At that moment, a monkey attacked, but Siwa's arms could no longer move. Fortunately, someone came to her aid. Han Chiol managed to throw earth to save her, while the old spirit riding a crocodile laughed contentedly. Han Chiol, ignoring the squabbling spirits, told Siwa to rest. Despite her concern for the injured, if she fell now, the entire camp would be jeopardized. Han Chiol was also severely injured, and without Suun there, this situation was dire. Suddenly, something caught Siwa's eye. Zhang Pil, carrying a bunch of bananas, was being chased closely by a troop of monkeys. As he ran, he cried out for Suun, but then he tripped over a rock and tumbled forward. Taking the opportunity, a monkey pounced to attack. Just as Zhang Pil thought he was doomed and screamed, a bolt of lightning struck the troop of monkeys. Siwa, astonished, looked over. Her spirit bowed before the divine. Han Chiol and his spirit did the same. The monkeys were scorched by the lightning. The rest were terrified and fled from Suun's thunder. Zhang Pil, seeing him, burst into tears of relief and roared with excitement. Suun did not respond but opened his treasure vault and continued using his chain lightning to deal with the monkeys. After finishing them off, Suun glanced at them. The situation had indeed been dangerous, but Siua and Han Chiol were still holding on. However, seeing Zhang Pil, Suun was almost at a loss for words, and Zhang Pil had even attracted the attention of a greedy, snatching spirit. The rest of the people, seeing Suun, were overjoyed. They called him the Blood Wolf. Suun was puzzled by this nickname. Zhang Pil proudly coughed, revealing that he was the source of the rumor. He had even presumptuously given Suun the title. Titles were as significant as a player's name, and Suun, annoyed, wanted to punch him. Instead, Suun compromised by giving him a title that made Zhang Pil ecstatic, and at the same time, they had survived the 9th wave. They succeeded in overcoming the 9th wave and were awarded 200 points, with Suun still leading with 41,660 points. Siua and Han Chiol went to greet Suun. Siua asked where he had been. However, it wasn't the time for explanations. They needed to take care of the wounded at the camp first. Upon hearing this, Siua quickly left, not forgetting to remind him to explain later. Suun smiled as he watched her busily take charge, as she would now be the camp's commander. At that moment, Han Chiol praised Siua for having grown stronger. He also arranged to meet Suun at the broken artificial tree for a promised one-on-one duel. As Han Chiol walked away, Suun coldly called for Zhang Pil. Then he asked him to report the situation. Zhang Pil eloquently summarized the status of each wave since Suun's departure. It was then that Suun realized Zhang Pil's talent. Before the regression, Zhang Pil had only been a follower of Han Chiol, but now he seemed worthy of the attention of Balfour, the 6th-ranked demon lord. When Zhang Pil mentioned the twins building a wooden barrier, Suun was curious about who they were. Nearby, siblings Riem and Dawun were arguing about constructing the fence. From a distance, Zhang Pil called them over to introduce them to Suun. Soon recognized them from the third wave, where they had made a strong impression with their diligence and continuous movement to counter the monsters. Upon seeing him, their eyes sparkled as they called him by the name Blood Wolf. Hearing this name made Soon uncomfortable as he still wasn't used to it, making him even more annoyed with Jong Pil. Then Soon discussed the effectiveness of the fence in keeping out the red wolves with the twins. It would be useful for the next wave, but they still needed more wood. The two of them couldn't prepare it in time. Observing them, Soon thought that the wooden barrier wouldn't be useful for the 10th wave. However, both the constellations of the Black Bird and the Giant Bird were protecting them. These were the Demon Lords, ranked 38 Halfas and 39 Malfas, each possessing abilities in construction and architecture. Combining their skills would be very beneficial. Therefore, Soon offered to handle the wood supply for them. The twins were overjoyed and praised Blood Wolf as the best, but Soon bluntly rejected that nickname. The four of them went together to the forest. He planned to use a sword to chop wood. The other three were amazed when they saw this. Soon refused to take an axe. Instead, he raised his sword and powerfully slashed into a large tree trunk, cutting it only halfway through. The others continued to enthusiastically cheer Soon on. This was the limit of the sword when Soon did not use internal power. He stared at the sword called Duran Dan, the mountain-breaking sword, but realized that without using his strength, he couldn't even fully chop a tree. Soon sighed deeply, then closed his eyes to concentrate his energy. He gripped the sword tightly and then opened the treasure vault. He then used the Taishan 18 sword technique, the most appropriate move at that moment. With one swing, the sword cut deeply into the tree trunk. The next moment, the tree was completely severed and loudly fell. The three others screamed in amazement. Immediately after, Soon improved his technique and swung his sword straight through the middle of the forest, causing a series of trees to simultaneously fall. The three were stunned by this scene. Whether out of a sense of revenge or not, he then turned and told Jong Pil to handle the wood transport alone, making him shiver. But when Soon called him his right hand, Jong Pil froze, causing Balfour to burst into laughter. As might fell of Jong Pil, embracing the tree trunk, could barely lift his legs, his body drained of strength, collapsing to the ground. Soon coldly looked at him and told him to stop whining. Despite his complaints, Soon was surprised Jong Pil managed to move 3 trees. Initially, he had planned to assign this task to Han Chiel, but at that moment, the twins were cheerfully encouraging Han Chiel, who effortlessly carried 2 tree trunks at once. Thus, Soon had taken care of the twins' task. Next, he would go to those who were injured. There many were moaning in pain, but only one girl was treating them. Previously, Soon had talked with Hemul, who was always at the forefront of treating patients and was very kind-hearted. At that time, the blood-soaked lion constellation, chosen by the great commander of Hell, Marbas, rank 5, was gently licking the blood scattered around its chosen human, Li Han Yule, as she used her energy to heal people. Under the fierce gaze of the lion, it was told that Marbas possessed the power to both create and heal diseases and was also the 5th-ranked general of Hell. Soon bent down and told Hamiel that it seemed she had not yet mastered how to control the power of the constellation completely and suggested redistributing their roles. Soon would take care of the patients with external injuries, while she should handle those with internal injuries, as Marbas' capabilities would be more effective for that. Hannibal was incredibly surprised. Although she was confused, she stood up and agreed. As Soon channeled his energy, the wounds on his arm healed. Hannibal's eyes widened in disbelief at his unexpectedly advanced skills. Wherever Soon's hand moved, wounds healed. He thought to himself that the healing was due to a 2nd-level enchantment spell, which was more powerful than a 1st-level one. Soon reassured Hemul that she would soon be better at healing than him. He proudly mentioned that the constellation she was contracted with was that powerful. The system announced that the blood-soaked lion gently stroked its mane, feeling oddly satisfied when praised by a human. Soon pondered how charming these constellations could be at times. After a moment of silence, Soon turned away and instructed Henul to call him if needed. She agreed and thanked him. As Soon walked away, he reflected on how the camp's structure had become more solid than he had expected. He continued to observe and ponder how much had changed while he had been busy at Rocky Mountain, wondering who to check on next. In the forest, Chang Siak was forging weapons. Seeing Soon, he was delighted. The weapons and Yuseo's in his hands were extremely sharp and dangerous, and the equipment that Yuseo, Ah, and Kang Han Kiel were using were all crafted by Go Chang Siak. The quality was top-notch. Suddenly, he eyed the sword on Soon with suspicion. Chang Siak grabbed the sword, inspecting it so closely it almost pierced through. He covered his mouth and chuckled, evaluating that the sword seemed to no longer need sharpening. Soon raised something for him to inspect. It was a crystal with an unusual shape. Chang Siak stroked his beard and remarked that the crystal was truly unique. Soon looked down at the crystal in his palm and silently marveled because Chang Siak immediately recognized it. It was the phosphoric crystal he had obtained by defeating the monkey boss at Rocky Mountain, one of the best types of stones that could be obtained at this stage. Soon handed over the crystal to Chang Siak, hoping he could craft armor from it. Chang Siak agreed, as he had previously made weapons for the entire camp. Suun asked whether Chang Siak could complete it before the next wave of monsters, which was due in 22 hours and 3 minutes according to the time remaining. Chang Siak was puzzled why Suun was so hurried. Suun thoughtfully replied that he planned to give his all in the upcoming wave.